Shalom Aleichem to everybody, and welcome to
Chizuk at work.
Chazda Hashem.
Chizuk, amazing.
At least someone remembered what it's called. I didn't.
Well, listen, in the middle of
Chizuk at work. And they just told me a minute ago what it's called.
okay.
But,
Well, in the middle of a work day, I think that often we could forget what we're doing. So if you're listening to this and sometimes you forget what you're doing, sometimes we do too.
Baruch Hashem.
Amazing.
So Chazda Hashem, we are trying here to present a Q&A, questions that have been asked throughout the years, and I don't think there's such a specific algorithm of how we're dealing with these questions, but the question for this week is about working from home.
Yes, it's a funny topic. It's come up in our Chabura, and specifically in the Work Inspired Chabura over the last couple of months, where we've been focusing on how we can achieve the Torah's vision for work-life balance, which is very much connected to how we can be productive, because Hashem envisioned us, gave us an amazing task to be super successful in many different roles and many different hats that we wear in our Torah, if you have a family, in family life, in our work, in our profession. These are all Torah values, and we need to be productive. So a question that's definitely come up, maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't really so much of a question, but for sure in the last few years is, hey, I'm working from home and I find myself not being super productive. What can I do about it? And for those that are tuning in, listening live, listening to the recording, I think even if your job is not always at home, there are some people that work from home all the time. I'm sure this is relevant, in today's day and age, that somehow, whether you have a hybrid model that you're working a couple of days a week from home and from the office, or it just turns out that you end up working from home once a month or evenings because you need to get work done. If you've ever experienced this feeling of like, it's not necessarily the way it feels, like I'm sitting at my beautiful desk overlooking Central Park or wherever you're overlooking, this question is for you. Okay, so how can we help people that are experiencing this feeling of I'm not being so productive working from home?
So I think, first of all, there's a more fundamental conversation or just insight to be had, and that is, are we meant to work from home? As people,
maybe the answer is don't do it.
As people who work, are we meant to work at home? And I think there is a fundamental challenge, and that is that we're not meant to work from home. It's an issue that faces a lot of people, and from a fundamental perspective, we're not meant to work from home. In regards to family life, in regards to husband and wife, to leave the home in the morning and to come back in the afternoon is healthy, it's good. And it's something which seems to be a natural form of keeping relationships strong. You leave long enough that you miss, and especially I find with a lot of women, I remember speaking to the Biala Rebbe. I took somebody once to the Biala Rebbe, and the Biala Rebbe said, a woman needs her space at home. A woman needs her space at home, and a husband shouldn't be at home. They should leave their home to give woman free reign of her space. And I remember that was a big deal, because I do a lot from the home. So I try, when I can, I try to leave, to give my wife that space. I've always got a lot to work on. But fundamentally, we shouldn't be working from home. Now, since COVID and everything that's going on in the way of work and how people are earning money today, a lot of people are working from home. And I think it's very, very psychologically, spiritually and physically confusing, because, the home is for the family, and the workspace was for work, and spirituality was for spirituality. And it's a very, the Beis HaMedrash, and we're mixing and matching, and I don't think it's good for us. So, for example, I speak to a lot of people who work from home, and they find their homes are less spiritual and more physical. Well, yes, because you go to shul, and you go to learn in a Beis HaMedrash, and the home is about the family and home. So yes, it becomes more physical. So I think fundamentally there's a lot to think about. And there's a conversation to be had about this.
I think that it's something that we touched upon in the Chabura, which I know that for myself, when I was exploring this topic, was a very big chiddush, right? We know that the the concept of makom, right? The concept of makom. It's obviously a very deep Kabbalistic concept that we have the world of makom, but we see that halacha reflects this, that when it comes to certain activities, right, when it comes to tefillah, right, it even would have ramifications in terms of what minyan and what place and shul a person should daven, and making different calculations if a person would ever be late. I don't know that would ever happen. Only people that don't have work-life balance would ever be late to shul. But if that ever happens, okay, so halacha discusses this shul, that shul, and we find that without getting into psak, that makom, a kviyas makom, having a set place, is something which is very valuable. Right, we discussed this amazing chazal that speaks about the fact that when one sets a place for a specific activity, tefillah, Torah learning, that the fact that there's a set place itself, it makes your place work for you. The tefillah is that much more powerful. The Torah is that much more powerful. And what was really eye-opening, right, what we discussed in the Chabura inside, was this Maharal that speaks about the fact that it's not just the world of tefillah and Torah, but rather everything. When there is a kviyas makom, when you have a set place, so then you can be more productive in that space. So I think, Rav Gerzi, what you're sharing is something that it's always seemed to have just been the natural program. David HaMelech says a person goes out to the sadeh, like in Barchi Nafshi, goes out in the morning, comes back in the evening. There was a set place for work. There was a set place for home, which was home. And then halacha tells us, yes, go to shul, daven in shul, be in a base medrash, because that is a set place. And now we find ourselves, right, in this interesting reality in which maybe, well, what is this place? What is my dining room table? Is my dining room table my work desk? Is my dining room table the place that I have conversations with my kids? Is my dining room table my shtender? Well, maybe it's all of them. But if that happens, then what's happening is, it sounds like there's a psychological confusion. And from a spiritual reality perspective, it seems that there's a merging of spaces, and that can lead to less productivity.
I think one has to be very careful, especially if a person's going to work from home. There needs to be an open spirituality from home as well.
Meaning, well, if someone does have to work from home, don't quit your job yet. And if you are, you speak to me, I'll help you find a new job. No, I'm just joking about that. I am a job search coach. But in any event, so if, let's say, a person is working from home, so what would it work, like what would be a suggestion to at least have a place in one's home?
Number one, have a place in one's home that's dedicated for work. And the Aruch HaShulchan and Rabbi Nachman, the Aruch HaShulchan brings it al pi halacha, and as well as brought in other places, that a person should set a space for davening and learning at home, for tefillah, for prayer, and for learning at home. And one could just extend this psak, which would be a very helpful psak, that in one's home, if one is going to work from home, to make sure that they've got a place that's dedicated to work in the home, and it's just dedicated to work. But this other nakuda that Rav Tzvi, that you brought, the place itself will help you. This is found in the Shulchan Aruch. The place itself will help you. When a person's davening, when a person's based on Gemara and brachas, but a person who dedicates a space, that space will help them.
Yeah. So I think what you can take away from this, to menuchas yourself if you find yourself working from home, is to find a way to establish a space. And when you establish a space, besides for the spiritual reality of what we just said, another benefit that you have, right, is that I think, this is, I think, what's underneath the psychological point that you were mentioning, is that we have certain associations, right, of specific spaces that can help us to get into a certain frame of mind. So, for example, if you walk into the Beis Medrash, just being in the Beis Medrash, right, and that's one of the reasons behind Kviyas Makom, I believe, right, is that it helps you to focus, because it's not like I walk into shul like I do, and like, okay, where am I going to sit? Am I going to sit there? Am I going to sit there? Am I going to sit there? That itself, like, okay, and then I sit there, and then there's that guy, and then there's this guy. No, like, I go into shul, this is my space, I've already warmed that space, and I can focus more. It's an association. That space is already, like, when I'm sitting in that space, I'm in tefillah mode. So when we have an office, right, and you walk into an office, right, that feeling that you experience when you just walk into the space which is dedicated for work, and the way that it's laid out, right, and the design, or however it is, that's an association for you that, oh, this is work, and that helps you. So if you're setting a space in work, at home for work, right, so one idea would be, okay, this table, this room, this corner, right, whatever it is that you're going to choose in your living quarters. But another suggestion, practically what you can do, right, is to think, what can I introduce to this space that would help me to be able to set it as a space for work, right? So one of the ideas we've been speaking about in the Chabura was the impact of one's environment, how one's environment, Chazal speak about, right, the environment itself, right, can open one up towards productivity depending on the design, the color, right, the layout, depending on what speaks to you. So if you're setting up your workspace, think, if this is going to be my workspace, what can I do to introduce to the space that would make it more productive for me? So it might be having a certain type of a chair. It might be, getting yourself some type of a gadget for your computer, or whatever it is, or even lay out even something small that for you, you have this association that this corner, this chair, this table, for me, this is work. And I think it's something which is very individual.
Maybe we can add as well a point of transitioning, that if you do find a place, you do create for yourself a space. So you can have something external, but there should be something internal as well. So we've been practicing, for example, the Habata exercise, which is just doing a check-in. Where am I right now? And it could also be an internal shift of that I'm now moving into this space. So you become present and you can say, I'm now moving into this space. According to, I can't remember who it is, but one of the Mekubalim say you can have Hashem's name, Shin Dalad Nun, Shaddai. So you can just have that name, see the letter Shin Dalad Nun in your mind, which is about boundaries, that's a good machshava to have as well when you're about to go into a space, transition as well.
I think that's, we've been having conversations with Bnei Chabur about this, how, even if a person's works in a different area, how important transitions are, because it could be, even if I learn in one place and then I work in another place, right? Or I'm going from work and I just took a train and now I'm going home and I'm showing up, or I'm driving home, like to create that transition between one role and another role. Because otherwise what happens is, right, and I know for myself that, often where if I'm moving from my office, which is my role of work, into my role at home, so I walk, it's about a 10-minute walk. And the question is, what do I do during that walk? So there have been periods of time that what I've done during that walk is just be thinking about everything that just happened at work. So it's just like whatever I didn't finish off at work, and all those conversations are just buzzing around in my head. There were other times that I was like, wow, the walk back is the most amazing time to catch up on WhatsApp messages, leave WhatsApp voice notes. So I was in this role of work, and then on my way between role of work into role at home, I was introducing lots of roles. The role of being a son, role of being a friend, role of being a student. And it was just like bringing in all of these things. And then as I walk up the steps, last message, okay, open the door. And now, bam, now I'm in this role of being a father, a role of being, now that was a bad idea, right? And then I realized on my own, right, that idea of doing that was a bad idea, because here I was actually having time for a transition, right? I had a 10-minute walk, but I wasn't using that time to help transition. I was just using that time to be efficient by getting more things done, right? So what I've been trying to do, and it's a really good question for each one of you guys to think about what you do to transition between your roles, right? Has been trying to think what would help me. Is listening to shir a good idea? Or maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe it's just also not necessarily going to help me to transition. Now, that's all true when you actually have a physical space change. Now, what happens when you're working at home and it's like, okay, the difference between me being the father and the real estate broker is walking from this door to the next door, right? And jumping from this Zoom meeting to a conversation with a kid. So their transitions, I say, are not just bonus, but they're oxygen. Because how can we just right away just flip like that, right? And I think that it becomes intensified when you're working at home, because I don't know if this is ever, I think it must just be something that I experienced, but it seems to be that at least one other person in the Chabura shared that you could be working at home, right? And suddenly, there's a knock at the door, as much as you try to warn the family, okay, and a kid needs help with this, or a spouse needs help with this, or there's a knock at the door and a neighbor needs something, or because you're home anyways, so of course, a handyman could come and you're just gonna try to be able to help him. And the amount of shifts and roles that we go through, it's so easy to become dazzled because we're not necessarily doing that transition. So Rav Gerzi, I guess if we can walk away, with a chizuk for everyone here today. I think we've spoken about a few amazing points just to review. One, if you're experiencing a challenge at work, working from home, we get it, and it seems that if you could avoid that, you should try to avoid that. Two is that if you are working at home, even on some level, that you want to be able to use the power of space and establishing space, right? Get the space to work for you, the spiritual koach of that, the psychological impact that it has, and you can see how you can try to design, even if it's something small, that can help create that association for you. And third is use transitions. So maybe because you can just, a couple of questions, and you mentioned before in Abata, but if we want to leave everyone who's sitting at their work desk today, perhaps they're sitting at their breakfast table today while they're working. That's why you're not here. You don't want to, stop, you shut off your camera? Okay. They don't want us to see. But wherever you are, it's okay. We get it. So many people are doing it today. What might be a couple of questions to practically help people to transition from that, okay, honey, sure, into, okay, boss, here's your report.
Maybe we can ask ourselves the following question: what can help me right now be here fully present? And you can ask the opposite: what's taking me away from being fully present right now? They're two strong questions. There's two strong questions that a person can ask. As well, just to create for themselves that space and have that mental ability to step into it and transition into it properly, doing that check-in, like we said before. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Okay, Heber, it's been so special to spend time with you, and we deeply appreciate you carving out that time from the middle of the today, the do, to stop, take a breath, and realize that Hashem is here. Hashem's with you, and we can bring Chizuk into the workplace. We can bring Hashem into the workplace. Each one of us, we should be able to support each other. If what you heard today inspires you, share it with a friend. Let people know about this amazing platform to be able to carve out a few minutes of your day to be able to be mechazik yourself and be mechazik others.
Baruch Hashem, l'chaim tovim u'l'shalom, bracha v'atzlacha.